Right now, we have Dave Curry, kind of just interesting. Before we launched our own company and our ministry, I was with another company, and I met Dave's daughter out in Tyler, Texas. And we met through her, and then our paths got separated. Dave was still living in Colorado. Then when we came back, I established the Lions Den, and we partner with the Roaring Lambs Ministry, which is a phenomenal group. And the president of Roaring Lambs is best friends with Dave, so we met again and we started connecting. But Dave is one of the top people for Zig Ziglar organization. He has his own company. He speaks all over the world. He also has a book, and so we are going to turn that over to Dave.
Thank you, Jason. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. And they always say in settings like this we shouldn't discuss religion or politics. So we don't talk about religion, we talk about relationship. And I'm not a member of any organized political party. I'm a Republican. So we don't talk about that either. So anyway, I'm glad you're here today, and I hope that what I have to say to you today can be of help to you, be a blessing to you as well. When you get where I'm at in the game of life at age 69 and it's 4th and goal on the 2-yard line, you better call the right play. And occasionally you have to take an inventory to see where you are in every area of life. You know, not just your inventory in business, but in every area of your life. And so I was reminded of a story I used to tell my guys. I used to own 6 retail stores and a wholesale company in Illinois. And we took inventory every 90 days. And the bank called one day, and we were opening up a couple more stores. And they said, we really need to have a great inventory because we're going to do an audit. We've got to make sure everything's accurate. And I said, okay. So I got the guys all together, and I said, hey, we got to take this thing right. So I motivated them a little story I heard one time about an Army general that got transferred to a new base, and he was a real egotistical type dude and wanted to show his authority and how tough he was. So I said to the guys, this guy said, I'm the new commanding officer on this base, and for me to know what's going on here, I have to have a complete inventory of this base. I have to know how many tanks we have, how many planes, how many guns, nuts, bolts, all supplies, the whole 9 yards. You got 30 days to get it done. Out the door they went. 2 weeks went by, and a sergeant happened to be walking by a desk one day, and the phone was ringing. He picked up the phone, and General was on the other end. He said, how's that inventory coming? He said, man, it's going great. We have this many planes, this many tanks, this many guns. He says, matter of fact, we even found 5 limousines down here for those fat generals to ride in. Boy, there's a big hush on the other end of the telephone. General didn't say a word. Pretty soon he spoke up. He said, oh, sir, do you know who you're talking to? Sergeant said, no, I don't. He said, you're talking to General John P. Green. And boy, there's a big hush on the other end of the telephone. Sergeant didn't say a word. Pretty soon he spoke up and he said, well, sir, do you know who you're talking to? He said, no, I don't. He said, good, fatso, and he hung up the telephone. So I told my guys, don't, make sure you take inventory once in a while. Today Jason's asked me to share with you, I was going back and forth on this the whole month. I've been waiting because I have a program, a 45-minute program I do for companies that is a secular program, but it weaves in my testimony as well, called Finish Like a Pro. And so I was going back and forth. Should I talk about that, or should I go ahead and give my testimony? I've been praying hard about it, and God's made it clear to me yesterday that I was going to share my testimony with you today, basically because of what Jason said earlier. A lot of us are going through tough times right now. And so whenever I give my testimony, the title of my testimony is Fear, Failure, Frustration, and Freedom. And the reason I give it that title is I've been doing this for 25, 30 years now, and I've given my testimony all over the country, that I find that we all in this room have some common denominators. I mean, everybody in this room has gone through fear, or maybe going through some fear right now with the economy the way it is, or health problems, or family problems, whatever. Everybody in this room has probably had some type of failing along the way. If you're like me, everybody in this room maybe gets a little frustrated once in a while. But a lot of times when I speak in groups, not everybody has experienced freedom. I can also promise you this, that nobody in this room, I don't believe, has faced any more fear than what I have faced. I can promise you definitely that nobody has failed more than I have failed. I have failed in every area of life, as a student, as a husband, as a father, 3 times miserably in business. But if you don't get anything else from what I say today than this one statement to take home with you, it's one of my favorite quotes that Zig Ziglar uses when I worked with him, that failure is an event, not a person. It all depends on whether you make it the last chapter in the book to failure, or if you use it as a stepping stone to succeed. All of us, as I said, get frustrated as well, and nobody gets more frustrated than I do. So I'm going to break my life story into 3 segments for you. And I want to emphasize today that I'm not here to tell my life story, to just pour out all my woes that I had in my lifetime, or for you to feel sorry for me or have sympathy on me. I mean, I'm 69 years old and I've had a great ride and I've had a lot of fun, but like you, we've all had a lot of bumps along the way. And so I'm here to share my life story with you, to hopefully to be an encouragement to you, and at the same time I'm going to give you 5 or 6 principles at the end that God has clearly showed me that's helped me to get through this process, that I think can be very helpful to you as well. I was born in 1942 in a little town called Bloomington, Illinois. Now, I know I don't look that old, but that's a fact, okay? But Bloomington, Illinois is famous for being home office for State Farm Insurance Company. And I was born into your kind of normal middle income family. My dad was a factory superintendent or foreman at a factory. I had a sister 5 years older than me. My dad had been married previously with 3 children, and that caused some problems in our family. And so we pretty much had everything we wanted materially. But the one thing that we didn't have in our home, unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of happiness, peace, or joy. And my mother, I'm so grateful that her and I were able to heal our relationship before she died, and she went to be in heaven as a result of that. But we had a very tough time together. And my mom had a tough childhood. Her dad was an alcoholic. She had 6 brothers. They lived on what they called the wrong side of the tracks back then. She'd been abused several times. And my mother always saw in me everything her dad represented, and she saw in my sister everything she always wanted to be. So she programmed my sister right, and she programmed me wrong. Now, what do I mean by that? You see, there's one statement that Zig Ziglar makes that I think if our country bought into, would change our whole country, and especially our young people today. And this is his statement. You've all heard it before. You're what you are and where you are because of what goes into your mind. You change what you are, change where you are by changing what goes into your mind. This thing's no different than a computer. It acts out what it's programmed to do. And my mother told me 2 things growing up that I never forgot. Number 1, whenever I did anything wrong, God was going to punish me. So I had a great fear of God. And secondly, that I would never amount to anything and be a no-good bum just like her dad. Well, I started acting out what I was programmed to do. And as far as I know, in the United States, I'm the only kid kicked out of school in kindergarten. That's not a good way to start your educational... Oh, praise God, man. I love you, brother. Yes, sir. And so, anyway, I didn't do too well in school. Now, as I got older, my parents fought a lot. Today they call it domestic violence. Back then we called it knockdown, drag-out fighting. And I mean they fought. And when I got up into my later years, like around junior high school, I started running away from home a lot and was gone a lot and go see uncles, whatever. And I had 2 uncles that were professionals at what they did. I had an uncle that was a professional boxer, would have fought for the middleweight championship before he had a serious injury. And my other uncle was a professional gambler, pool player, card player, and so forth. So he taught me how to play pool and play cards so I could fend for myself if I needed to do that. And by the time I was 16, I had become a compulsive gambler. And I'd run away from home, didn't go to school, and that type of thing. And my sister was just the opposite. She was a straight-A student, beautiful girl, Christian girl, a state baton twirling champion for the state of Illinois, drum major in a band. She went off to school, Christian school, in 1956. In 1957, they came out with a polio vaccine. And my sister went down to the infirmary and took her shot. And the next morning when she woke up, her throat was paralyzed, she couldn't swallow. They flew her to Mayo Clinic, discovered she had a brain tumor at the base of her brain that had been there since age 14, and for some reason that serum had activated that tumor. They operated on my sister. They didn't think she'd make it. She'd come out of the surgery paralyzed from the second rib down. She came home, And she had 7 major surgeries at Mayo Clinic. Before her last surgery, she asked my dad to do her a favor. And he said, "What's that?" She said, "I want you to get all the aunts, uncles, cousins together and tell them all goodbye one at a time, because this is my last trip. The Lord's told me it's time for me to go home, and that's what's going to happen." And I watched every family member file in. I was the last one she called in. And she looked at me and said, "Dave, I know you're a great kid, but I know you got some problems. But I want you to make one promise to me before I leave." And I said, "What's that, sis?" She said, "I want you to promise me that someday you will commit your life to Christ and live for Him." Well, what do? You make the promise. She took off. They called my uncle and I 2 days later, said she's not going to make it. We jumped in a car, drove to Rochester, Minnesota, and got in at 9 o'clock. At 9:05, when I was walking across the street, my sister passed away. We buried her 2 days after my 17th birthday. 2 weeks later, out of grief, sorrow, now you got to remember, my poor mom was with my sister 24/7, 365 for 2.5 years. That was her life. And she was really grieving. And we had an altercation over something that I don't know what. But this I can remember over a half century later. My mother looking at me and saying, "Why couldn't it have been you? You're a bum, nothing, nobody. You're never going to amount to anything. She was such a fine Christian girl." Now, I forgave my mother for that. But here's what it did. It triggered a great fear in me. I said, wait a minute. My sister's 21 years old. Christian girl, she's dead. Mom told me that every time I did something wrong, God's going to kill me. So man, I started running from God. I mean, I would do things to find peace. I'd worship idols. I did stupid, dumb stuff just to try to find peace with God. And couldn't. I was scared to death.